Have you ever found yourself doing something that contradicts what you really want? Something you know will only make it harder later on. Maybe it's avoiding a difficult conversation, letting a promising opportunity slip by, or giving into temptation. Maybe you're finding yourself in situations that you know deep down just aren't good for you. It doesn't make sense, does it? You've worked hard for the success that you've achieved, and yet somehow you're still standing in your own way. This hidden inner conflict can be perplexing, and the stakes are high. We often feel a certain pressure to achieve the results that we're seeking. So, why do we act against our own best interests even when we know it's irrational? In this video, I'll reveal the hidden reasons why successful men can still struggle with this behavior and how to break free from this cycle once and for all. Hi, I'm Brendan, a former executive who helps high achievers break through to new, wider definitions of success. Welcome to the channel. I'm glad you're here. So, today we're talking about self sabotage, and it can be a really challenging area to work with. We are pushing in one direction out to achieve the goals that we're seeking, and something's pushing back, getting in the way. Sometimes we almost feel like we're witnessing ourselves do something that we know is contradicting or at least interfering with our ability to move towards the goals that we've set for ourselves. Because it can be frustrating and confusing, it's also an area where our inner critic will often show up, and we can really judge ourselves harshly for acting in ways that go against what we're seeking. And there can be that temptation to really find the discipline or just stop doing that and able to move forward towards the goal that we're trying to achieve. I think the first thing to really understand when we're working with self-sabotage is we're working in the realm of both the conscious and the unconscious. And those places where you're doing things that might show up that appear to be irrational, those are probably sitting in your unconscious. And with a little bit of digging and some possible decoding, we can really work to understand why you're behaving in the way that you're behaving. And there really is a hidden language or a hidden logic behind why you are getting in your own way, why you're self sabotaging. You might not be achieving the goal that you're out to do, but there is some benefit that you're getting from the behavior that you're engaging in that you would consider self-sabotaging. We tend to come to goals with a somewhat linear perspective, step by step. We download the workout plan and we follow it for 30 days and get the results that we're seeking. What that doesn't account for, and what a lot of books and guides and videos don't account for, are some of those hidden motivational behavioral pieces where underneath the surface, there's a reason why we're not able to follow through. And so, what looks simple on the surface can actually be really hard to execute for a variety of somewhat shadowy reasons that really take some effort to decode. Often, there's some version of fear or discomfort or another unpleasant emotion that is playing into our overall success. And that takes a little bit of looking at and some patience and time to understand. And as men, we often move into that problem solving, action oriented mode. And if we've got some disconnection with our overall emotions or some of that somatic body intelligence, it really becomes harder to understand and really harder to address these self sabotaging behaviors that are getting in our way. Ultimately, I see self sabotage as having a certain logic to it, but it may not be a logic that makes sense to us at first. And we need to spend the time to understand all of the forces at work if we're going to be successful. It really sits within a key intersection of a lot of different things that go on for us. It might tap into our vulnerability where we have to work with things of our fears, our doubts, having a sense of control or a lack of control, that ability to risk being hurt, being disappointed, looking a little bit foolish. Those can all be pieces that stand in the way of our success. You can tap into perfectionism and our rigid rules of what the process or the final outcome needs to look like. And we don't give ourselves room for misses or adjustments along the way. It can tap into our feelings of self-worth and self-esteem. Do you fundamentally feel you are someone who can be successful? Do you feel deserving of having good things? These are questions that get asked at a fundamental level as we move towards goals. It can cross over into the territory of identity. Your failure or success may attract attention towards you. It may add new pressures, or you may be afraid of looking foolish if you're unsuccessful. And it can trigger imposter syndrome for people, some of those versions of success, and whether you truly are prepared to be into a new place, or whether you feel like you're just faking it and afraid to get called out for that. And so, how it all plays out is you've got these counteracting forces, one towards your goal and one towards perhaps a hidden motive. Here's some examples: the man that doesn't want to get hurt or feel unlovable in a relationship, so he decides to reject the partner or ghost them rather than really sit with that vulnerability, even though he says he wants a relationship. We can get perfectionistic. And for example, we miss a day of a workout and now want to write off the whole week or the whole month. We forget that progress over time is more important than a perfect record of achievement. As I worked with men, I've seen how messages we receive in our childhood get carried through into present day. Whether you were told you would amount to something or not, do you believe you are lovable and worthy even if you're not achieving something? This is particularly true in those who have had an atypical career path. You may have made $1 million, but you still don't consider yourself a success because you don't have any degrees and you undersell yourself. And as I mentioned, imposter syndrome can absolutely show up in this realm. I can tell you from my executive role, I would often see young leaders submit a really impressive resume, have a great conversation with the recruiter, but then just before the interview came, they would cancel. I'm sure out of fear that they might look inadequate or be told in that interview that somehow they weren't good enough for the role. I don't doubt they were frustrated by their own self sabotage in really closing off an opportunity for themselves out of some irrational fears they probably could have worked through and got to the other side of. We really want to think about what those hidden forces are and what they want from us. They are usually trying to protect us from looking bad, from shaming ourselves, from somebody's harsh judgment. They're sometimes protecting us from discomfort, whether that's the discomfort of getting out of bed on a cold morning and going for a workout, or whether that's the discomfort of having to learn a new skill, being in a new career where you don't know it perfectly, where you're going to make mistakes and there is space to learn, but we can often be really hard on ourselves. And there's a discomfort, and sometimes the self sabotage will try and protect us from that. And if you're going to make changes to this pattern, this is the area where you want to bring your focus, trying to get a sense of what it is that your unconscious is trying to protect you from, or what greater good is it trying to bring for you. So, how do we do that? I think a good starting place can be looking at our patterns and seeing if there are particular triggers or things that often come up that take us off track. What can we learn from that? It also provides an opportunity to look at our goals as more than just a simple outcome that we're seeking. In fact, this is a great chance to use our classic asking why 5 times. For example, I want a promotion, and I can ask myself, why is that? Well, I've been in this role for a few years, and I think I'm ready for that next level role. Why is that? Well, I've been here, and maybe on some level, I'm actually a little bit worried that if I'm not progressing, then what is going on with my career? And why is that? Well, I think I actually have some doubts that if I'm not moving up, people may think of me as a poor performer or inadequate or lacking the potential to move up. Why is that? Well, I think there's a sense of some of my worth that I get from my title and my role, and I'm really tapping into some of those pieces. That starts to give us a better understanding of the full spectrum. And so the opportunity isn't really just about getting that promotion, but that opportunity is a piece that reflects my identities and my beliefs and some of my fears about what others may or may not be thinking about me. We can also look forward and say, okay, I now have the job. What's going to happen in that realm? Will I feel confident? Will I give myself the space and the time to learn? Will I be okay with kind of being clumsy in those first couple of months in the role and getting stuff wrong and having to not quite know which way to make a decision, having to ask for help. Am I being set up into a role with a really supportive supervisor who creates the space for that? Or are there expectations that I'm putting on myself or others might put on me that I need to be performing perfectly from day one? If that's the case, I may end up with some self sabotaging behavior that prevents me from actually moving into that role because, again, on an unconscious level, part of me wants to stay safe. And understanding and projecting back, projecting forward, asking why, these just give us an opportunity to both kind of forecast what some of those problem spots might be, as well as see if we can find at a deeper level some of the pieces that are driving our decisions, driving our goals, and having an honest conversation with ourselves about what it is that we really want at the end of the day. I think there's also room for the classic Nike just do it approach for some other things. If you're trying to build a new habit, then you may be overthinking it, you may be letting perfectionism get in the way. And so pushing yourself a little bit, accepting that discomfort and knowing that you can tolerate the discomfort and still move through something that's a little bit challenging for yourself, even though it feels counterintuitive, even though there may be some signals in your body that maybe you shouldn't or would prefer not to. If you know that it's absolutely going to move you towards your goal without any bad after effects, then go for it. Just do it and take that action and move forward. Think we can sometimes also overestimate a single event. And so it is easier to ask for somebody's number and be turned down if you've done it the first 25 times. It is easier to go through the process of getting a new job and going through the interview if you've done it 10 times before. You've not only built up some of those interview muscle memory pieces, you also have some of that perspective and might realize that the fear and uncertainty was a bigger barrier than just trying it out and see what happened and learning that it's okay and your world didn't fall apart because you got rejected or you didn't get the role. It allows you to gain some perspective and realize that some of the fear and some of the anxiety might have been some of the unknowns in that process. And at the end of the day, if you didn't get the phone number or you didn't land the job, you're okay with that. And you can certainly move on and figure out what comes next. And this is absolutely that territory and a place for building that somatic body intelligence, building those emotional connections. If we're going to understand our self sabotaging behaviors, we also have to know what those signals are in our body and in our emotions if we want to be able to counteract them. And so, if we can't tap into the fear that sits within our body, that tightness in our chest, or just an understanding of emotions to know, hey, I'm kind of feeling anxious about this. And that really provides such a faster map to the self sabotage, to understanding what those drivers might be, and really kind of understanding where you're at and what you need to be able to move forward and through it. And it may mean coming face to face with some of those inner values, beliefs, messages from earlier. What do we fundamentally believe about our success? Are we the kind of people who can have that job, can be in that relationship, can have that body? And if the answer is no, then there's probably some work we're going to need to do to work on those core values to create the space first where we know that that goal aligns with our identity first, and then the actions towards those goals become easier to achieve. So I hope that starts to paint a picture of the territory of self sabotage, those moments that can feel really irrational or almost like we're observing ourselves doing something that feels a bit crazy, feels like we're going completely against the goals that we have for ourselves. We have to remember there are different forces, different parts of the brain that are all kind of moving in different directions. And the work of self sabotage is starting to align them all together, starting to understand those hidden doubts and fears and work them through. And that really paves the way to moving towards success. I've worked with many men who found themselves caught in this cycle, men who appear incredibly successful from the outside, but who were really experiencing being blocked, being stuck, or just a sense of trying to break through this self sabotage behavior and just not being able to understand why they were acting the way that they were acting. And what I found to be incredibly powerful is for men to have a trusted partner to work with. Somebody who is focused on results can provide an objective point of view and help you identify those pieces to help you get out of your own way. I've had the privilege of guiding men through breaking their own self-sabotage patterns and the insights that have come from that, and seeing those aha moments turn into breakthroughs. And it's amazing how the right insights, combined with a solid strategy, can provide real and lasting change across careers, relationship, and just a man's sense of being grounded and confident. It's not about fixing problems, but unlocking the potential that's already there. So if you find yourself at this crossroads, consider working with somebody who can guide you through this process. Your success is within reach, and you no longer need to be sidetracked or sandbagged by self sabotaging behaviors. Understanding the different forces at play, tuning in and trying to work through some of those beliefs or fears or doubts is going to get you on the track to achieving your goals and finally breaking free of behaviors that seemed irrational and hard to understand. Know that I care about you and I'm rooting for your success. I'll see you next time.